Welcome to another expert interview. I start them all the same way. I'm always excited about the people I get to interview. Cruz is no exception. We've gotten to know each other over the last year, and I'm really excited to dig into today's topic because it's something that every business has to consider, right? We've got to talk about systems. We have to talk about processes. We have to talk about how to grow. And we have to talk about what we do when we hit the ceiling. And there's a lot of moments in business when you hit the ceiling. And so, Cruz, man, I'm so excited to have you here. I always let my guests introduce themselves. So tell us who you are and what you're doing, and then we'll dive in, man.
Well, first of all, let me start by saying that it's an honor to be here with you. Since I've met you, I think we've hit it off really well, and I just love to be, have the opportunity to be on this podcast as your guest. So about me, so my name is Cruz Gamboa, and I'm basically a scaling CFO. So I help founders scale their businesses, and I basically bring a combination of sort of my CFO experience. I was at General Electric for over 20 years. So I was a CFO there, et cetera. So I have a lot of that background. But most importantly, what I bring also is the sort of the know-how on how to scale companies, how to scale founders. Not only because I've done it, even inside of GE, I did some of that as well, but also because I've done it for myself as well. I've had to scale myself up to be the kind of person that can be supporting founders in their own journeys. So that's basically what I do. And I also I throw a little bit of spice in what I do by making it exponential. So I am all about exponential thinking because I think this is what really gets you to start, thinking big, thinking bold, getting people inspired and focused. And that's what people are looking for, right? People are looking to get excited, inspired, and frankly, I mean, just looking at the science of scaling a business is the moment you set really big goals, your brain has to solve for that. So it doesn't matter if the goal is big or if it's small, it's probably about the same effort, and the results are so much different. So there you go.
I love it, man. Like I said, I love the work you're doing, and anyone who's grown a business, like there are these sticking points. Let's start on the CFO side because you mentioned that. I want to talk there, and then I do want to anchor a lot of the scaling stuff. On the CFO side, what are some of the financial indicators that you drive people to? What are some of those metrics and numbers that they should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so a lot of people, they overthink a lot of this stuff, right? So because I mean there's there the finance, when you think of finance, it is kind of a rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, there's only a few things that really matter, okay, in a business. And the first one I will say is cash. Cash is king. And I'm not just saying that, it really is. So, and it's not just the cash that you have on your bank, right, on your bank account. It's the cash that is to come. It's the way that you structure your offers. It's the way that you pay your vendors. Is the way that you time certain investments, right? Is your ability to get credit lines that are appropriate for the stage and the size of your business, because liquidity is also another element of cash. So when I think of like cash, I think of like cash and your credit lines, basically. So, and the reality is that a lot of us don't do a really good job at forecasting our cash flows. And if you've been in business, there has been points where something happens and maybe the cash is not coming, but you still need to make payrolls, or you still need to, pay that investment for the next event, for the next acquisition of clients, for the next marketing campaign. And if you haven't really properly managed your cash, that's when you get into trouble. And I tell you, one of the worst feelings, and you probably know this, one of the worst feelings in life is not being able to have cash to pay your people and to keep the business going. That's like everybody's nightmare. And not only that, but actually there's been studies that companies that go bankrupt, they don't go bankrupt because of bad strategies. They don't go bankrupt because of a market shift. They go bankrupt because they run out of cash. And I think the statistic is actually like mind blowing. Like 80% of companies that go bankrupt, they go bankrupt because poor cash management. So I'm sorry that maybe that was a little bit long, but I just want to like underscore the importance of not just looking at your cash that is on your bank account, but the cash that is forthcoming, and then just having a sort of a more of a mindset, a cash mindset when you are creating your offers and when you're structuring your business. I will say
Love
that
that,
that
man.
one is, yeah.
Yeah, let's go deeper there because I think there's a lot to dissect. So the first thing, give me one tip on structuring your offer. And I can kind of ground this in a reference point. When I was in the marketing world doing websites, we would get paid up front for everything. And all of my counterparts in the industry were like, that's insane. That's unheard of. And I'm like, no, that's just how we do business. Because I found that 50, like a progress payment, a 50% payment always carried some sort of, well, I don't think we're there. You think we're there. The client doesn't know. Now we're chasing money, whatever it is. And it actually drug out the process. So I'm very like, we built backwards, but I didn't want to be on the line waiting for the client to pay. So what are your thoughts? Give me a couple tips on structuring your offer and how you should take payment if cash is.
Yeah, so there's two elements, right? So because I mean, it really depends on like your like who your client is and what your offer is and what is the sort of the transformation, the product or the service that you are delivering. In some cases, you're probably better suited just having a subscription-based model because that's what incentivize your customer base to basically buy from you. But and just think of like this, like the SaaS model, right? Like they are continuously, getting revenue from a group of clients, but there's a portion of those clients that are willing to actually just pay now, okay, in exchange for a discount. So that is one concept that is really easy to just to get your head around, which is, create that differentiation between, here's a revenue base, cash flow for my offer versus you pay now, right? And this is how much you are going to save. And for some businesses, especially like businesses that are more liquid, they don't even think about it. They're like, oh, it's cheaper. Okay, I'll just pay it up front, right? And then what that also does, if they pay it up front, is kind of like what you were hinting, is that it reduces a lot of the ability for them to walk away, right? So it gets them more invested in solving problems if there's any, and shit happens in businesses, right? So let's acknowledge that. But if you have been paid up front, it just gives you the ability to cure the whatever issues that you're having with that client, to make them whole, etc. And that's a different conversation than if they could actually just shut the valve and say, you know what, we don't want your service anymore. It gives them more leverage in that conversation. And so I just honestly, if I could have anybody paying me up front, that would be better. But not every client is going to be able to do that, right? So that's just the way it is.
Talk to me about the vendor side. So you mentioned, how you pay vendors matters too. So what are some tips or thoughts on that side of things?
Okay, so let me just kind of like zoom out a little bit because I wanna talk to you about the cash conversion cycle, basically. And what the cash conversion cycle is the time that it takes from any dollar that you put into the company. How long does it take for it to make it back into your pockets with profits, hopefully, right? So typically in a normal sort of product driven business, you're going to have three components to the cash conversion cycle. You're going to have accounts receivable, accounts payable, and inventory. And the best way to think about the cash conversion cycle is in terms of days. So AR days, AP days, and inventory days for those businesses that have product, right? But if you don't have any product because you're like, I don't know, a coaching business or a sort of a professional services kind of business, I think the more logical metric would be just to look at AR, AP. And then if you want to spice it up a little bit, you can talk about, for example, things that are going to, at the end, going to impact your spend, which is, for example, marketing. You can see like how much marketing you're spending at any given time because for some businesses, that's basically their cash engine. So it's a really good proxy to start looking at how much cash you're spending, and you could also convert that marketing spend into marketing days. Like days of marketing spend. So that is the way that I think about like managing in general, managing what is called working capital. That the cash conversion cycle at the end of the day is just your working capital. So I think about it in terms of days. So if you're getting paid on average, right? Because remember, some clients are going to pay you, kind of like on a month-to-month basis, and some are going to pay you upfront. At the end of the day, sort of that receivable it can be converted into a number of days. So let's say that on average you're getting paid 10 days. If you're getting paid 10 days, then I guess the next part of the equation is how many days are you taking to pay your vendors, right? So in some cases, it may be beneficial for you to pay quickly because you get a big discount, but you're always incentivized to take the longest to pay your vendors if you can get away with it, right? So that would be kind of like the magical thing for any business to do, to take as long as you can to pay vendors. So I mean that's just kind of like the way that I think about at least those two lines. And then inventory, which is something that many businesses they look at it from a dollar perspective, like, oh, I have $1 million in inventory, but the real question is how many days of inventory do you have? Like for example, I have a client. We were looking at his financials the other day. It was like 210 days. Do you really need 210 days of inventory? Probably not. You probably need, I don't know, 90 days, but not 210 days. So when you have that much inventory tied up in your warehouse, that is literally just basically just imagine that you went to the bank and you took a bunch of cash and just put it on the basement and you can't touch it. It's almost the same concept, right? So you want to be looking at all of these balance sheet accounts, which is something that most entrepreneurs are not going to do because they're going to be focused on revenue, cost, overhead, and that's kind of like where the world ends for them, right? Maybe taxes, right? And that's it. But there's this other stuff that happens on the working capital that is so important to look at. And then the other thing that I would also, when it comes to marketing, the other thing that I like to really focus, like, spend a lot of attention on is how effective is your marketing spend. How effective are you being at spending those dollars, right? So you look at your client acquisition cost, you look at the LTV of your clients, right? And there's the formulas are kind of easy to figure it out. And then you look at the relationship between LTV and CAC just to see if you're being effective. And if your LTV to CAC is 3 times or less, then you're not doing a good job at managing your client acquisition strategy. If it's between 3 and 5, you're doing a semi-decent good job. If it's above 5, then you're crushing it, right? So, I mean, those are kind of like 3 very easy numbers that I use for my clients. I mean,
That's
I
awesome.
said a
Again,
lot, so you
just
tell me.
no, it's good though. It's good. It's good talking points and things for people to think about. My goal in the CFO finance part of this conversation, I just want them to think different because the more I get to know you, that's where I know you shine is asking those other questions and looking at it different. And so I love that. So let's shift. You talked about credit lines. I want to talk about something that I'm hearing a lot of right now is, self-funding, getting credit lines, bringing external capital. What's your advice for people who are looking to make a big growth push? They need to inject capital. Like, how do you guide a business on? Do we bring it in? Do we get lines of credit? Like, how do they think about that process?
The best, the sort of the number one thing that we have to do for any business is to have projections. And this is not just being a nerd, which I'm a little bit of a nerd, but not that much. And it's just being a good business person to actually have a forecast of like, what is it that you're going to do, right? Because it's sometimes, and most of the times, just by moving a few things, you can probably time your expenditures and your revenues so that you don't need outside capital. The worst thing to do is to actually go and look for capital when you need it. So if you're going to get a credit line, get it when you're absolutely liquid, when you have a ton of cash in the bank and you're like, hey, Mr. Bank, I have a ton of cash. I may need a credit line for maybe a rainy day, but not today. That is the best time to go and look for a credit line when you don't need it. Okay. Because when you need it and you have like only like $10,000 and you have like payroll for 25,000, that's, they're going to be like, whoa, so what happened here, right? and it makes it harder to go through a credit application process when when you're sort of tight on cash.
I love that. Every time I talk to young entrepreneurs or new entrepreneurs in general, I always bring up credit and lines of credit, and they all kind of look at me like it's that important. I'm like, yes, because
Yes.
there's gonna come a point in the business where the cash is gonna be sideways. Like it just happens.
Yeah, because I mean, I just want to get back to the concept that I hinted before is liquidity, right? So liquidity is your cash plus your credit lines. And what you want to have is as much liquidity as you can because guess what? Things change, things happen. Sometimes maybe you have if maybe it's not even a bad thing. Maybe it's an opportunity to buy another business, to buy into an event, to hire the person that is going to make now your business better. You see what I'm saying? Like, or to just go and like do an absolutely super big marketing spend, and because the opportunity is ripe at that moment to make that investment. So you want to have liquidity because liquidity gives you optionality. Okay. And so that's what we want. As business owners, we want to have as many options as possible.
Love it. Talk to me about you talked about forecasting and building financial models. Where do you find people go wrong when they're building their financial forecast? What are some pieces they miss or some blind spots?
I think where they go wrong is that they don't make them. They don't make any financial forecast. They kind of do like back of the napkin calculations, like, hey, I'll get this many people, I charge this, blah, blah, blah. But they don't put it on a spreadsheet. And sometimes I'm not even talking about a very difficult spreadsheet. It's just kind of like laying out, okay, this many people are going to pay me like this many people are going to pay me like that. And then just having an idea. Is it going to be 100% accurate? Forecasts are never accurate. Let's agree on that. But what it gives you is the sort of an understanding and an intuition on what are the important drivers for your business. Okay, so speaking the language of finance is not something that you should leave as a secondary, like something that like an accountant needs to do or your finance guy. The way that I train the people that I work with is that I say that they need to be their own CEO and CFO, and the CFO is only helping you, but you need to be like as a business leader, cash is got to be front and center in your business as well because no cash, no growth, and that's just the way it is. I mean, you have to be proficient at understanding financial statements, at preparing at least basic projections and forecasts. And if you don't have that expertise, and if you feel uncomfortable and insecure about it, then just ask for help. You know, and I do a lot of the work that I do with some of the founders that I work with is people that are really good at what they do. Okay, but they feel a little fussy on the financials, and I spend a lot of time trying to translate what they're doing with their business into a financial forecast and financials so that they can have that clarity and feel confident and not feel as intimidated by, sort of their numbers.
Awesome, man. Let's go to the other side of the aisle because scaling up is a really big part of what you do. And I want people to hear that too, because you're very systems minded. You think about scaling differently. Let's ask a bunch of questions that direction. First, when it comes to scaling, what are some of the systems and processes that like have to be documented? Like they've got to be documented, they've got to be standardized. Like what has to be in place to be able to scale?
Um, so what I would say is that the number one thing that I try to instill in the people that I support, the clients that I support, is that you need to identify which of your offers is the scalable offer. Okay, not every offer is scalable. Some are, some aren't. And then once you define the scalable offer, right? You want to make sure that at least anything that pertains to that scalable offer, it's in an SOP because that is the thing that is going to allow you to make the tweaks, the changes as you scale the business. So if there's one place where we need to put our attention from a sort of a process perspective, is that those processes that somehow intersect with your scalable offer. Whether that is, the way that you enroll people, the way that you onboard the clients, the way that you do the delivery, the automation that is required, the sort of the alerts that you have to send automatically, the follow-ups that are required, the content that needs to be created, the follow-up calls, the sort of the quality checks that you have to do in order to make sure that they are, your clients are having a good experience. All of that needs to be documented. And that documentation becomes the basis for the growth of your company. Because now when everything is and I'm not just saying like you write it and you kind of like forget and never look at it. I say the opposite. I think you always, like every time that there's something happens, you literally need to pull out the sort of like your playbook and be like, okay, how is this, like what's failing in this process? Like, do we need to make a change in the SOP? This is kind of like the kind of mentality that we need to bring to the table. And this is a habit, by the way. It's a habit and it's a mindset shift because a lot of us are like, well, we don't have to. I mean, we have an SOP, but you never look at it. You don't lead by example, right? You don't lead by looking at the SOP and saying, well, this SOP needs to change, because there's a process break, right? So we need to go ahead and change it. So that is the importance of making sure that you have an SOP for your scalable offer.
I love that conversation moment you just highlighted because that to me, I always wonder what it feels like because I'm a huge systems person, right? Like I always wonder, like, how are you having conversations with your team when you have nothing to ground it on? Like, there's nothing to point at, there's nothing to look at, there's nothing to have a neutral conversation. So then it becomes a you said, I said, we interpret. Like that's not, you can't scale that.
You can, and that's just the reality of it. You cannot, and that's why um, I just want to like simplify things as well because you don't. I mean, you do need SOPs for as many processes as you can think of, but if we have to kind of like fall on our sword for like the few SOPs that we need to create, it's for the scalable offer. Everything else, we can wait, but that needs to go first in the priority.
I love that though, because there's so much noise in there. I mean, everyone's to-do list. I mean, I bet anyone who is going to watch and listen to this within reach or on their screen somewhere, they've got a freaking checklist of crap, right? And so it's like, how do you prioritize that? Again, does it impact your scalable offer? That's a great takeaway. Talk to me about this. What tough conversation do CEOs, when they're scaling, avoid? Like, what are some of the things that they just ignore or they put on the back burner that they shouldn't?
Firing people. And the reason is, and especially like for the type of clients that I serve, which is basically clients with seven-figure founders between like $1 and $10 million, and many a times, some of the people that have helped them grow their businesses are either their friends or almost close to being friends, and because they've been really loyal to them and to the business, and they are great people. But the reality is that sometimes especially as you gain the clarity on what is the new company, the new direction of the company, and like what are the talent and the resources that you're going to need in order to build that company. And you start like comparing that to the people that you have in your organization right now. Sometimes those people are not the right people, and that's a very uncomfortable place to be as a founder because you like those people, you like that person, right? And what do you do, right? And that's a very difficult conversation, to be honest. Just today I just had a conversation with this client that I'm helping. It's a real estate client, and they were talking about this person, and they were saying, "Oh, she's great. She's been so loyal." And then we were doing what is called a functional chart. So we were kind of like mapping all of the different roles that we needed in order to double their sales next year. And then they're like, "Okay, a transaction coordinator, right?" And it's like, "What is this person? Does this person have the talent to do this?" And they're like, "Well, she does this and that and the other." But it's like, no, no. Is this the right person for the job? It's like, well, we have to think about it. So we have to think about it. Is the answer is no, but they have to let go. of that, or find a way around it, which is, if you can find a good place for them to land, I mean, that's great, but sometimes you can't,
So you talked about where they fit in the future org chart. How do you help people visualize what that looks like? Sometimes it's hard to think about the positions that will be needed that don't currently exist.
I think that comes from clarity, because I mean, we didn't really start there in this conversation, but in my framework, the way that I like to start is by just getting a really clear vision of the future. Like, what is it that you want to create? And it sounds like a really simple, question to answer. It's really not. It's really hard for people to just tap into their part of their brain or heart or whatever you want to call it and say, this is the company that I want to build. And I want it to be 100 millions. And I believe that I can make it. And when I get there, this is how I want it to be. Like, having that sort of emotional flexibility is really difficult for some people. They can envision that because they have all these things, all these filters that makes it very hard for them, whether that's fears of, or the inability to let go of their current identity or whatever it is. We're not, I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole that we can go into, but it's hard for some people. And so I try to facilitate. That's one of the first exercises that I try to facilitate so that we gain that clarity and we can start the process of letting go of the old identity and stepping into the new identity. And in the meantime, as you're kind of like doing your process, we start kind of like architecting what are the singles and the doubles that we're going to hit in the next year, right? Because I mean, we do have to show some improvement. And in that process, we do an initial inventory of what are the things, like what are the roles, the seats that we need in order to achieve those objectives, and who are the people that we have. And then we start kind of like trying to compare those two things. And sometimes there's good alignment, and sometimes there isn't. And the reality is that sometimes there's good perceived alignment, but in reality, it's not a good alignment, because when you start throwing core values into the mix, and one of the things that I really encourage the clients that I work with is to start thinking of hiring, firing, and onboarding on the basis of core values and performance. Okay, so sometimes there are people that are in the organization and they are great performers, but they don't align with the core values of the organization. And these are the people, just think of them. I mean, I'm going to call them the rotten apples. They're going to, basically get everybody, misaligned or frustrated. I mean, you see what I'm saying? So at some point, you just have to come to terms that you either accept that we hire and fire by core values and performance, but core values is really important, or we don't. And if you don't, then you pay for the consequences, right? Just keeping that guy that is an absolute star in sales, but he's an asshole, and he's like bad mouthing everyone and gossiping or whatever it is that this person is bringing, the toxicity that is bringing into your culture. You pay for it. You pay for it in lack of growth. You pay for it in frustration. You pay for in people leaving because they feel frustrated at your inability to make the tough decisions, which is firing those people.
Mm.
Sorry, I said a lot.
That's good, man. Just pack it in. It's good.
Yeah.
Let's talk clarity. I want to dig there for a second. When you're helping someone cast the vision, what are the check boxes they should be checking? Is it revenue size? Is it clients served? Is it verticals they're in? Like what are some check boxes or things they should think about to go like, okay, I'm gonna do this exercise myself, and then obviously I'm gonna hire Cruz to help me, but I'm gonna do it myself. But what are some things I should be thinking about?
You will be surprised. It's not any of the things that you're just saying because I start with, I go a little deeper. It's like, what is, and this is work for founders, okay? For as I'm working with founders, I try to get them to tap into the thing that was the spark for them to start the business. the purpose, the reason behind why they decided that creating whatever company needed to happen, and how is it like, how is that moving you today? Like, what is that vision in reality? Like, how is that helping humanity? Why does your company exist, right? Why should you exist 10 years from now? And literally, look, what happens a lot, by the way, in the way that I do it, is that once I get them to sort of like lower their their cortisol and just kind of like connect with that, sometimes, sometimes people cry. And that's happened a lot, to be honest, because they realize that they started with a vision and then all of a sudden that morphed into something else and something else where you needed to kind of like make money at all costs. And then you kind of like, you feel like you sold out to the business, the profits, the revenue, the growth, and then you forgot about the real mission, which is the thing that actually moves you and gives you the energy to go 300 miles if you had to, right? Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for what is it about your company that is not only motivating to you as a founder, because there's going to be a lot of shit that is going to go wrong. And if you don't have that North Star, that compass, that to keep you aligned and focused, then you're just not going to enjoy it, the process of scaling your business. And frankly, you may even become a little bit resentful and grumpy. I've met some founders that are kind of like upset at their teams, right? But in reality, they're upset at their teams because there's no alignment. Their teams are not aligned with what they're trying to achieve, but they are not even clear on what is it that they're trying to achieve so that it can be communicated so they can align with them. Do you see the irony in all of that? It's actually,
Mm.
it's super strange, but it's something that happens, and it happens to a lot of us. I mean, it's happened to me as well. So
Man, there's so much to unpack just in that answer alone. There's so many things, but I love that you took it away from the numbers and got back to the people. And I think we're in a very humanity focused mode right now where people need that. And I think the issue is everyone's focused on everyone else. But I love that you said, what was your spark? And I wrote down, why should you exist 10 years from now? And what is the spark that made you start the business? Like, I think those are great questions to sit in as a business owner and really just like step away, right? On the next trip, even in the next car drive, don't answer the phone and just think about it. Because I think that often, and I'm guilty of this too, we make decisions. Yeah, we can do that. We can offer this. And then you do that enough times and all of a sudden you're something that you didn't even mean to be.
yeah, it happens to the best of us.
I love that,
Yeah,
man. Talk to me
yeah.
about core values. When you say core values, what's that look and feel like for someone who might want to either validate that they have the right ones or maybe they don't even have a list?
If you have customer centric, integrity, and some crap like that that sounds like corporate mumbo jumbo, you have them all wrong. Okay, those are not core values. Core values are, we love working with good people. We, I don't know, we lead from the heart. We do what's best even when no one's watching. Like things that are real that people can actually remember. It's like when, like, for example, just think about like the lessons that you learn from your elders, from your family, for example. Like, hey, always tell the truth. They didn't say, oh, here's your core value for you to know, Devin, integrity. No, they said, tell the truth. So that's easy. Tell the truth. That seems like a more human thing to say. Tell the truth. Or don't steal. These are more like the core values that we should be crafting for us, for people to understand and make them simple. And once you write them, then give them examples on what that means. Like, here are the behaviors that, like, if you want to excel at this, these are the behaviors that you need to demonstrate. And you embody those values. And this is why authenticity pays off, because if those values are aligned with who you are as a founder, and you want those values to be part of your company, then it's really easy. You don't have to pretend that you have core values. Your core values are yours. You're just you. You know what I mean? And then you basically make your values what the company is built on. And then it's really easy for people to remember because you talk about them all the time, right? That's the other thing. You have to continuously remind people. You have to think. I know this is hard for some of us because you say like, oh, we already had this conversation on Q1. It's like, no, that's not how core values. You need to almost like do them on a weekly basis. You need to tie them to everything you do. You go into a meeting to talk about whatever, and you're like, well, it ties to our value of X. Like you continuously have to tell people over and over and over how everything that you do is connected to the core values because that's your operating system. In the end, what you want is once you step away from the business, you want people to remember what your core values is so that you don't have to tell them.
Mm. Oh man, if people, I'm gonna have to promote this episode everywhere because there's so much truth. But what I found in all your answers is simplicity. Like we may have packed a lot in, but we're not actually talking about anything overly complex. In fact, most of your answers are getting back to just core good business. And I love that. And I love that you talked about authenticity because we see that and you go to a lot of events and you could see the people on the stage where you see their stage presence and you see how they represent and you talk to them on the side and you're like, who are you? Like you're two different people. And in business, people do that all the time, right? They go home and they act one way, they show up to business, they act another. It's like, well, wait a second.
Yeah, can I just share a story
Do
because
it. Yeah,
you
yeah.
just reminded me. I just had a close encounter with what you just described on a positive note. So I think I mentioned to you I was at the 4 room mastermind, and and there was this presentation from this guy. I've never heard of this guy. His name is Jake Carls. He's Canadian, and he's the CEO of a company called Midday Square. Um, they do like the most tasting, but these are like the greatest freaking cookies I've had in my life. Okay, they're so yummy. So Jake, he's just like he's a persona, right? Like he has character. And when I saw him, I thought he was just some like brand influencer, some you know what I mean, like some like YouTube sensation or something like that. Because just the way he looked, I didn't even like bother to. I mean, I'm sorry about that. I didn't really bother to like look him up, right? And then I was just like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna listen. And he started talking about how he built his company from the ground up. He was, for all purposes, he was a reject. You know, he barely like graduated with bad grades. He was a kind of like the school clown, right? And you know he graduated, thank God, right? He went to college as well and graduated from college, and then he couldn't find an interview. Like he just like he I think he must have applied. I don't know the number, but 30 applications, not even one job offer. Okay, so he was not in a good place. You know, he had been now looking for a job for a while. He wasn't in a good place. He had his sister and him just kind of got together and started this company. And the way that they built it is that they built it as if it was a reality show. They documented every single part of their business journey. And that actually started catching my attention. I'm like, huh, this is interesting, right? So in the way they did it, it's like, I mean, we can have a whole episode on that because I know I love Jake. And what ended up happening is that at some point, his sister had done so much work for like 3 years. They built a whole factory. They just like expanded operations in North America. They were just growing, right? But she was just taking the biggest load in the business. She was really the grinder, in this equation. And ultimately, she just burnt out. And like he actually showed a video of his sister um, when she was actually talking about her burnout and how she was going to have to step away at least for a while. And he was actually sitting looking at the video, and I saw him how he was crying, and like honestly, it made me cry, and I still kind of like guess get goosebumps when I think about that moment Because what he did for me, brother, you know what he did for me? He reminded me of why I started in this path of creating my company. Because I have gone through burnout myself. I closed an $800 million deal, which is one of my greatest achievements in life. Okay. I had no idea what I was doing. Okay. So in a way, I kind of feel like him, but I closed it. And it was because of me and because of my sort of my stubbornness, I guess. I mobilized the whole company, General Electric, imagine, like a behemoth like that. I mobilized everybody to close that transaction. But what happened to me was that I worked for like 3 months, it's almost like 4 months straight. Almost didn't take any Saturdays and Sundays. I was working all the time to close that transaction because it was that important for my career and for me. And ultimately, it actually got me promoted to executive, which is a whole new thing. But what ended up happening is that during that time, I just kind of distanced myself from my ex-wife. Okay, I distanced and I became a little more strange from my daughter. I became really ill to the point that I would get like this like I would get disoriented. Like I will be talking to people and I lost kind of my cognitive ability because I was so burnt out and overloaded. Okay. And I remember like months after the deal had closed, I was saying to myself, there's gotta be a better way to do this shit. And this is what got me to start like looking into spirituality to connect with who I was. And that's basically the process that started my own self-discovery and understanding that I was no longer aligned with General Electric. I didn't, I don't ask me how it happened, but it's just like, I was just like, this is not what I want. And listen, I tried my best to stay aligned and connected and I couldn't, you know? And then just take that as a lesson that when we actually tap into those events in our life that were really tough and traumatic, and we transmute those events into something better that can help others, that's where the shit is at. That's a place of power where now you're listening to my words and you're connecting with me at a human level because I'm being completely authentic and transparent, right? This is my journey. Okay. That's what we want to create for your company.
Ah, well, yeah, I think we just sit in that. As you said, as you told that story, what's interesting is I could visualize it and I got the goosebumps as you were telling it.
Hmm.
And I think that what I appreciate about where this conversation went, this is why I love doing this because we just go wherever, is this last moment is so impactful because I think we all have those moments where like we did the work. We did what we were supposed to do
Hmm.
and we got the thing. But once you're on the other side and you look around at all the other things that you lost or that broke or that fell apart, it really makes you question like, was it worth it? And how do I do this differently? How do I still have the big impact and hit the big goal and do the big things and scale the company past 10 million and do all these things, but do it in a way where you're more balanced with your family, yourself, your spirituality, your health, all these other things, man. I, I love that. I want to leave a message for people and then we'll let people know to connect with you. Like if you're listening and watching this episode and like you're not inspired, I don't, we failed because there's real meat here. And I highly encourage you to reach out to Cruz because this is every conversation I've ever had with him. It's authentic, it's real. He asks real questions that get you to think. And I want you as a business owner, because my mission in life, right, is to help businesses succeed. And so I want you to lean in if there's something here that stood out. Cruz, tell people how they can connect with you, man, and let's make sure they can reach out.
Well, thank you for that, Devin. So the easiest way, like I just hang out a lot on LinkedIn. So just connect with me on LinkedIn and just tell me that you watched this episode. That's an easy way. If you want to email me, you can do it so by writing at cruz@cruzgamboa.com. That's actually really easy, right? And my company's name is Ascend Growth Ventures, and we help founders, seven-figure founders, scale their businesses using a combination of finance, strategy, and frameworks to get you to basically just get you out of your stuckness, get you out of your head, and get you going in scaling your company.
Love it. All those links will be below wherever you're watching or listening to this. Cruz, man, thank you so much for your time and your knowledge and being authentic because that is what inspires me, right? Is being around more people like you that are doing good in the world. So thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you.